Good morning out there, traders. It is June 18th, 2024, and welcome to the Apteros Daily Market Insight. Let's dive in here. So these are the levels for today. Let me pull up our levels from yesterday and do our recap here. Recap, we had value in this section here. We were talking about the dissonance in this zone, and we had been building value for some time prior to that. So kind of waiting for this market to break out, poised for a breakout. We had the scenarios for it. Scenario one was a continuation of this dissonant picture. We started to see that a little bit more into the morning where we started to sell off a little bit coming into that opening area here. And it just started to buy, right? We started to buy up, buy up, buy up, came into our line in the sand, no opportunity, no downturn, no inflections from this zone. Things started to get a little bit more aggressive to the upside here, where we started to stall above our line in the sand, and then it just shoots straight out of there with no pullbacks. So for a classic NADRO analysis system, we generally do trade pullbacks. So in this particular scenario here, no opportunities really for us to get on board with this kind of high energy move right through our target zones. If you're a breakout trader, hopefully you got a piece of this because it was a classic, really good breakout scenario. Kind of what you dream of as a breakout scenario where you just get in on a shift here somewhere and the thing never really pulls back at all for the remainder of the day until you get into the last hour before the closing. So just one of those situations where we had a clear understanding, a clear vision of what we were expecting in the analysis with scenario two, especially once we got up above here. It just didn't give us an opportunity. So we knew the why, we just didn't have the how to access the trade. Now, kind of analyzing what's going on today, we are out in neutral territory. The reason why we are out there in neutral territory is because any real semblance of the bulls is back here. This is where we have a couple of different time frames lining up in this zone here. But in the risk reward landscape from this area, what you're looking at here is kind of 3/4 of the way done. So if you're looking at the risk reward, this is really the reward to the upside that we have left in the classic NADRO sense, and that would be a continuation of this area here. So if we continue to the upside, that would be kind of the end expectation there. But the overall, confluence and bullishness in this market is really back here, and we are out there. This is the target zone for this particular area here. So what we're actually seeing in the risk reward landscape is this is the end of the line really for us. And the expectation from areas like this is, a little bit more to the downside, believe it or not. The problem is we just don't have a really clear setup on a different time frame to justify that type of position. So we don't have a clear bias setting up for a bearish trade opportunity, which you put all of these factors together and you end up in a very neutral situation on the ES. In other words, we're seeing very bullish behavior. For that to continue, we're going to need to see high energy today and more upside up into that zone. The problem is the risk reward landscape is quite used up at this point, and the upside here doesn't necessarily justify how much we could pull back into our main line in the sand for the bulls here. So it's one of those situations where the ES is just not in a good spot contextually to be putting a ton of risk on or something like that. Now, if you're a more short-term trader and you're able to operate in neutral levels out here, it's an area where you could probably scalp a little bit and be a little bit more short-term in your thinking along those lines. Once again, we're not in the business of predicting anything. We're in the business of consistently analyzing the market with our tools. And out here in these zones, it's just not a place where we have a really strong bias. The one thing I will say is that the bias in terms of our trade location on our three upper time frames is more bearish than it is bullish. The problem is, like I said, we don't have a bearish trade set up yet. So if this market, kind of pulls back, continues to come back into these areas, this would be the first neutral zone I'd be paying attention to. And then if that one breaks down, the kind of area that we'd be watching more for the bulls is down here. So if you want the classic scenarios, this is really our line in the sand. Scenario one is a hold up above that. Scenario two is a breakdown below that. If we do break down below that, it's a lot of open space before we start hitting any kind of target areas like real ones. There's a little bit of a scalp spot here, but if we get back down below that, this is really where the next spot of value is to the downside. The upside, you have all the neutral areas, you have all the neutral targets up here, so you kind of understand the landscape there. Trade well out there, mind your risk. Remember, this is not the best trade location for us in the ES. The risk reward landscape isn't all that great, and we don't really have a trade set up for the shorter time frames for the bears to kind of confirm the trade locations on the upper time frame. So just one of those situations where we don't have a ton of clarity. We don't have a good risk reward landscape either. Not exactly a day in which we're willing to have a clear, clean cut line in the sand situation like we have had in the past.